And then going to the secondary, like we were talking about, I think once again that was we talked about left tackle being a question mark coming into camp, and this spring as well. I think the other question mark would have been in the secondary and who was going to be the guys to step up at cornerback. And Georgia goes out and gets Derion Kendrick out of the transfer portal from Clemson. He's probably going to be the solidified number one starter at corner. After you lose guys like Eric Stokes, Tyson Campbell, DJ Daniel, all three of those went to the NFL, and essentially 2 first-round picks because you had Stokes in the first round and then Campbell with the first pick of the second round. 2 very, top 33 picks. You had 2 first-round corners out there the last 2 years. And really, even if you want to look further back, you had DeAndre Baker playing opposite of those 2 guys when they were youngsters as freshmen. I think Georgia has found a cornerback that they feel very confident in Derion Kendrick. He was not at the scrimmage yesterday. He had a friend of his pass away, so he was at a funeral. But Kirby Smart said that he has been with the team at practice. He's back with the team now, back in Athens, and that he has been really showing out and showing his ability to pick up on some things. I think that they were maybe a little bit concerned about the learning curve that Kirby Smart and this defense has in the secondary. And that Kendrick has blown their expectations out of the water. That he comes from a system where they ran, multiple different schemes in the secondary, and that he's really, really picking up on things well with Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, and new defensive backs coach Jamal Adai. Opposite of him, you're probably looking at a battle between, Amir Speed is a veteran guy. Keely Ringo is a very talented guy, former number 1 corner, and then Jalen Kimber as well. Nyland Green, I don't know that he would be in the battle for, maybe the number 1 spot, but certainly in the battle for playing time. Kamari Lassiter is a guy that they brought in this class alongside Green, and Lavassier Carroll, who was a running back out of IMG. They flipped him over to to play corner this spring, kind of out of a more of an emergency thing there, where they wanted to see him, especially because they know what they've got in the running backs room. They've got 5 guys there, and Carroll wasn't necessarily going to have the opportunities this year. They wanted to see what he could do in the secondary, and he's been looking great so far. Made some plays in the spring and has, flashed in the fall as well. Going back to the starting position opposite of Kimber, I think you're looking at Speed, opposite of Kendrick, you're looking at Speed, Kimber, and Ringo as those 3 guys. In yesterday's scrimmage, Speed and Ringo were the 2 starters, with Kendrick gone to the funeral, and Jalen Kimber was out with a shoulder injury. I think, again, Georgia fans feel that they've got enough. It's not a talent issue there. It's an experience issue. None of those guys have a ton of experience. I think, Speed has the most experience of them all, being an upperclassman, a senior. But you're also looking at a very talented guy like Keely Ringo, who didn't get to play at all last year. So he's, fresh on the scene, and learning the ways as time goes. Kirby Smart said yesterday that he hasn't essentially played tackle football in over 2 years because he missed out on spring practice in 2020 after his senior year of high school. They discovered a torn labrum that he suffered in high school, had surgery, missed all of the 2020 season, and then spring this year, take it for what it is. It's spring practice, and you're not getting live reps. So he hasn't played a football game since he was a senior in high school, since the All-American game. And so I think Georgia is going. It's going to be a learning curve there at the cornerback position. Georgia's probably going to play all 3 of those guys in that opener, assuming that they're all healthy. And I don't think there's any reason to believe that they wouldn't be. I would imagine that Kimber's injury is probably something that he's going to be quickly back. We've seen photos of him out at practice this week. So, probably a little bit dinged up there and more of a precautionary thing to keep him out of the scrimmage. Like I said, I would imagine that all 3 of those guys are playing against Clemson. And then, at star, it's a battle between Tyke Smith, the West Virginia transfer, and Latavius Brini. Those 2 guys, Kirby Smart said, if you look at last year and what Georgia did at the star position, they played 2 guys. They played Tyreek Stevenson, like you mentioned. He transferred to Miami, and they played Mark Webb, who was drafted by the Chargers. Those 2 guys, maybe not from a skill set standpoint in Smith and Brini, maybe they're not the same as Webb and Stevenson there, but from the perspective of the idea of the fact that you can play them, both of them in a single game, that's going to be huge for Georgia because, again, with how much these secondary players, how much these corners are running and covering receivers, you want to have depth at that position. Brini and Smith also provide depth at safety behind Lewis Cine and Chris Smith, where Georgia's a little bit thin on numbers there. But certainly, those two guys are standing out from the pack. They're neck and neck, is what Kirby Smart said in terms of how they're battling at the star position. I would imagine that, again, like that second corner position opposite of Kendrick, I would imagine you'll be seeing both Tyke Smith and Latavius Brini on the field at star against Clemson.